If you're doing a qualitative PhD and you're struggling to articulate your aims, your objectives, and your research questions, you are not alone. PhD researchers often say to me, I feel like I'm saying the same thing in 3 different ways, or my supervisor has asked me to clarify my objectives, but I'm not sure what's even wrong with them. So no wonder you're confused, right? Here's what's actually going on. The problem is not that you don't understand your topic. The problem is that you haven't yet separated 3 different levels of thinking: purpose, process, inquiry. And until you do, your aims, your objectives, your research questions, they might feel slightly repetitive, vague, or misaligned. So let's break all this down. In qualitative PhD research, your aims operate at the level of purpose. They answer one question: what is this study trying to achieve? Not what you'll do, not what methods you'll use, but what intellectual work the study is attempting to accomplish. Your title says what the study is about. Your aims say what you want the study to achieve. Most doctoral projects have 2 or 3 aims. For example, imagine a qualitative study exploring the experiences of first-generation students in elite law schools. A set of aims might look like this: to explore how first-generation law students experience academic belonging within elite institutions. To understand how institutional cultures shape students' sense of legitimacy and confidence over time. Notice the verbs here: to explore, to understand. These reflect an interest in meaning and experience. Now compare that to a different framing: to investigate the factors associated with persistence and attrition among first-generation law students. To examine the relationship between institutional support structures and student retention. The verbs here, to investigate, to examine, suggest that we're looking at this differently. There's a different intellectual orientation here. When it comes to aims, you're making a deliberate decision about how your study is oriented. Is it toward lived experience and meaning making and understanding? Or towards patterns, explanatory factors, relationships between those factors? Your aims need to be aligned with your orientation. They don't need to be perfect, but what they do need to do is reflect the kind of knowledge that you're trying to generate. I'm going to ask you to do something now. Write one of your research aims down there in the comments. It doesn't matter how rough or clumsily worded it is, pop it down there. Seriously, write it out, because doing this kickstarts an important process in your brain. It gets those sometimes fuzzy ideas that we have about aims out of our head and onto the page or onto a screen. And that is a really important part of developing them further. So get in the comments, share your aim or aims, have a look at what other people have written, and let's start figuring this out. Now we move down a level, and research objectives answer a slightly different question. What will I actually do to achieve my aims? And this is where a lot of PhD researchers tend to rush. Objectives can feel quite bureaucratic. They're something that you need to get written down, maybe for a proposal or an annual review. But when they're vague or where they're randomly ordered, that creates confusion. Instead, think of your objectives as deliberately sequenced. I've got a simple structure for this, and it's a 3-part progression. Establish the foundations, do the analytical work, and then pull the insights together. Now, let's apply that to an example. Okay, first objective, establishing foundations. This is where you clarify, define, or locate the key elements of your study. For example, to identify how first-generation status is defined and experienced within elite law school contexts. This builds your conceptual and contextual groundwork. You're not analysing yet. You're establishing what you're actually studying. Now it's time for the middle objectives, where we're doing the analytical work. This is the doctoral core. This is where you interpret, analyse, compare, evaluate. For example, to analyse how institutional narratives of meritocracy shape students' experiences of belonging. To interpret how students make sense of academic confidence over time. Now you're doing the intellectual heavy lifting, and notice that these objectives are more specific. They move from purpose to action. And the final objective, where we're pulling things together. This one signals your contribution. Not grand solutions, just intellectual integration. For example, to highlight how institutional practices shape the academic trajectories of first-generation law students. Or to propose ways institutions might better recognise and respond to hidden forms of exclusion. Your objectives should feel like a logical progression, not a scattered list. When they're sequenced deliberately like this, your project comes across as a lot more coherent. If you're finding this video helpful, I am really pleased about that. But I just want to ask you a quick question. Have you subscribed to the channel yet? And Patrick wants to know that as well, don't you, dude? Yes, he does. So if you haven't subscribed, take a moment to go and do that now. And that will ensure that every time one of my videos comes out, if you hit the notification bell, you are informed about it. So you don't have to go hunting high and low for videos. They are going to come straight to you. What could be better than that? So go and take a moment to do that now. Back to the video. Now, research questions. Research questions translate your aims and objectives into questions that your study can actually answer. They guide your reading, your data collection, your analysis, your boundaries. Most qualitative PhD projects have 2, 3, or 4 research questions, and here's the key shift that you need to know. Rather than inventing your research questions from scratch, work backwards from your objectives. Ask yourself, what would I need to know to achieve this objective? For example, if your objective is to interpret how students make sense of belonging over time, your research question might be, how do first-generation law students describe and interpret their sense of belonging across their degree programme? If your objective is to evaluate how institutional contexts shape experiences, your research question might be, what institutional practices do students identify as shaping their academic confidence and persistence? Often, the language you use in your research questions echoes the language you used in your aims and your objectives. Now, that repetition is not a problem, because that repetition is alignment. Developing aims, objectives, and research questions, they're not completely separate tasks. They're different ways of articulating the same underlying thinking. Aims, objectives, research questions, these are 3 layers of one coherent project. At this point, many PhD students say, I feel like I'm just writing the same sentence. That's normal. There is overlap, but the function is different at each level. Your aims clarify purpose, your objectives structure the process, and your research questions focus your inquiry. Together, they transform a broad interest into something that's actually researchable, a study you can actually do. And it's important to remember that you're not carving these out in stone. You're sketching them in pencil. They'll evolve and they'll change as your understanding gets deeper. So if you've been hesitating to work on them, just make a start, okay? Because what matters now is coherence, not perfection. Most of the surface level advice on aims and objectives focuses wholly on their wording. Use this verb, don't use this phrase, ensure that they're smart. That can be helpful at a basic level. But at doctoral level, at PhD level, this is not about technical wording tricks. It's about intellectual alignment. When your aims reflect your orientation, when your research objectives show logical progression, when your research questions clearly arise from those objectives, your approach feels calmer. Your methodology becomes easier to justify. Your supervisors and your examiner can see that you're thinking like a serious researcher. That is the standard you're aiming for. If you found this video helpful, there are another couple appearing on the screen right now that I think you might also enjoy. So go and check them out. I'll see you in there.